Hi, this is Roman Dzindzi again, and I want to introduce you Larry Christiansen, and our topic is instant attacks. Instant attacks are not prepared when your opponent weakened either his king's position or some pieces aiming on your opponent's king, and instantly, without much of preparation, you conduct deadly attack. And I don't know too many people that are better at this than Larry. And watch and enjoy. Will be very, very instructive.
Hi, this is Larry Christiansen. We'll be talking about instant attacks in this video. And we're going to start, let's first talk about some of the basic principles of attacking play. Now, one thing I like to teach my students is to always examine all force, especially all checks, all captures, any move that has an effect on the enemy king position. You always examine those moves. Of course, examine all checks. So checks and captures are important. Then you also look at all violent forcing moves. So those are the checks and captures. Also attacks of enemy superior force. Let's say you have a knight, you can attack a queen. You always look at those moves. One of them, they might even be a fork in there. Now let's take a position like this. This is actually played in a 1-minute game. I was black, and I think 1 minute. This is called a bullet game. And even there, you can develop your attacking instincts. This is basically all played on intuition, a little bit of calculation, but mostly intuition. I had the black pieces, and I have this rather large force of material aimed at the very shaky white king on f2. And of course, you train yourself to examine a move like queen takes g3 check. But of course, here we see that move, that knight is in the way defending against that type of move. But then you see, well, gee, if I can divert that knight on f1 from its square, maybe that queen takes g3 will work out. Yeah, it does. So by process of elimination, all within a few seconds, I managed to find the move rook h2. A violent forcing move, comes with a monster threat on g2, and first point is, if bishop takes h2, black plays queen takes g2 check. Obviously decisive. White's going to lose his queen on c2 and suffer the further indignity of a easy mating attack by black. So that's no good. He does have to meet that threat of rook takes g2, so what did white do? Well, he had to play knight takes h2. Now that sets up, of course, now the killer shot, queen takes g3 check. And if king takes g3, that was actually the game continuation, bishop h4 mate. A relatively better move would have been king g1, but after knight h3 check, king h1, knight f2 check, king g1, this knight on f4 comes barging in, threatening mate on g2. And if white defends with bishop f1, it's mate. And if he takes the knight, he loses the queen with a continuing mating attack. So I thought a pretty instructive little example. I played in a 1-minute game, showing the intuition, the thought process of a grandmaster when they enjoy a nice, fine attacking position. Okay, let's go to our next example. It's slightly more complex, I would say, but also illustrating an attacker's instinct for the jugular, to play ruthless, no holds barred attacking play when he's got the opportunity. And this is also played a 1-minute game. Played on the Internet Chess Club way back 2003. And again, a very good illustration of what to look for when attacking. So here black has left his king in the center, one move too long. And or that was my feeling at the time. If I need to strike. Now black actually has a pretty solid position. If I don't do something violent, he's going to castle and go from there. He's got the bishop pair, especially his bishop on f6 is quite powerful. So one of the things you do in the Sicilian, you're always looking for moves like knight d5 and knight f5, particularly when the black king is uncastled. And the benefits that accrue from that kind of sacrifice are often enormous, and that's the case in this example. I played knight f5 just based on instinct. I knew it had to be definitely a high candidate move. Now this was being a quick game. Black didn't have too much time for reflection. So my opponent probably figured, well, he cannot hope to survive with a knight hanging around his position, a knight like f5 hovering around his position. So he captured the knight, which actually turns out to be a mistake. He should have played bishop e5, and that would have made life a little more complicated. I can retreat the queen. He plays pawn takes knight, and now I can play f4, attacking his bishop. He takes the knight. That's the best move. I get one pawn with check for my trouble. And now he plays king to d8, not king f8, then he gets crushed. In fact, he gets mated. He plays king d8, queen takes c3, and white has good compensation for his material sacrifice, but the outcome is very much in doubt for both sides. The better player will win. Black has a fighting chance, white has good compensation. However, black has probably figured in the brief amount of time he has to reflect, decided to take the knight. And look what happens now when you take a knight like that. The firepower generated from the sacrifice. I played knight d5 first of all, attacking. Now the knight's in prime attacking position with tempo. Forces the black queen to very inferior square on d8. Now I play e takes f5 check. Rook on e1 joins the battle. It's like a chain reaction. First the knight, now the rook is in play. Don't forget my bishop lurking on a2 has also had its diagonal, its horizons opened up. So after e takes f5 check, well, black noticed that king f8, queen takes d6 check is not very appealing. So he based his defense on the slender reed bishop e5. And now this didn't take much more than half a second before I chose to play rook takes e5 check. And already I had the final conclusion in my sights here. Fairly obvious but quite pleasing. He played d takes e5. I played queen takes e5 check. He tries to run with his king. He can run, but he can't hide. I played queen d6 check. King g8. Knight e7 check. By the way, knights on e7 on squares like this, often very, very potent attacking forces, because they cover typically an exit square on g6 and also the square g8. And they just really seem to be, there's one combination after another that involve knights on e7. We always try to, any line where a knight plops into e7, you take a look at it. On this particular case, now black played king h7. If king f8, I have a discovered check, winning his queen, which is utterly hopeless. He tried king h7, and it's a pity I have so much material, the rook and the bishop. I wish I could remove them from the board, but I can't. I finished the game with queen g6 check. Pawn takes queen, pawn takes pawn check. Not too bad for a 1 minute game. And which reminds me, there was an amateur sent his an example of his attacking play, alert eagle eye, in a very similar formation to one we just had. And that involved pawn power in the attack. And here we see an example of what looks to be a typical pawn storm type variation of the Carey's attack Sicilian, where black made the unfortunate choice of putting his knight on a very bad square. Okay, we'll start here, and as we can see, white's got a very formidable looking position. Far advanced kingside play. What is black's knight doing on f8? Not doing much, let's put it that way. I think his basic intent when playing knight f8 was to discourage white from playing g6, but there are other ways to attack, and white found a very effective one. He played h6. Black, to avoid the disintegration of his kingside, now played g6. And now white played knight takes c6. Black played bishop takes c6. White played queen d4. And by the way, this is also a recurring theme, the power of centralization. In the mid to late middle game, queens are ideally placed in the center. Early middle game opening, no. But in the typically no. But in the middle to late middle game, we like to have queens centralized, and this case is a good example of why. White attacks the rook on the corner on h8, and if black plays, well, he should have played e5, but if he plays e5, white had ready the answer knight d5, outposting the knight powerfully, and if black plays bishop takes knight, queen takes, attacks the rook, white has a pretty superior attacking formation here. Quite promising. Still, that was better than black's actual continuation here, which was rook g8. And that led to immediate disaster. The queen rudely intrudes on black's kingside formation after queen g7. He can't live with the queen there, and he can't live with it. So can't live with it or can't live without it, because rook takes g7, h takes g7. White promotes to a new queen, giving him a full rook ahead with no complications. And of course, the threat of queen takes g8 is cannot be met any other way, so black resigned there. Okay, now let's move on a little bit to my theme. I talked about a little bit about always looking for those violent forcing moves, checks and captures. Anything to do with the enemy king position, you always examine it to the furthest extent possible. Here's an example of what I'm saying. And this was also played on the internet. And my opponent, I will not name names, but he's a famous American grandmaster. And we've played many lively games before, but we're not going to I won't mention it, but he's had a habit sort of neglecting his king safety. He has very few weaknesses in his game, but if he does have one, it's a little bit of neglect of his king safety issue. I had the black pieces, in this position, and he had a queen on d3. So I'm attacking his pawn on f4 here with my queen. I'd love to play queen takes f4. And if white plays move like f5, well, that gives me, that's probably his best try here, but that gives me some nice squares to work with. Well, I have to, admittedly, it does have the effect of freezing out my light squared bishop. But I think I'd still enjoy pretty fair attacking chances in this position. One thought might be rook h3. That'd be a thought, probably a bad thought because of knight takes g4. Well, a good thought would actually, rook h2 check is the correct thought. Rook takes h2, pawn takes h2, and here black would be interested in eliminating, opening up these files on the king side for attacking purposes. Let's say white plays knight takes g4. I can see queen g5 creating some headaches for white. Most definitely there's a little queen d2 check action ready to go, for instance. The outcome would be looks favorable for black. Still, that's far better than the actual game, which saw something quite different, and that was here in this position. White played the careless king takes g3. Okay, so I try to follow the basic attacking rules at all times, and here you always examine any move that affects the enemy king. You look at it, and here's no exception. I played queen takes. The more I looked, the more I liked, and I didn't even calculate this to the end. I just knew, gee, I can drive his king by force to the 6th rank, and he's surrounded by my 2 rooks and 2 bishops and a pawn and my king. All those factors, plus I keep that strong g4 pawn floating around. All those factors mean should be a force mate. Okay, that's indeed what happened. Queen takes f4 check. King takes queen. Bishop e5 check. King g5. This was easy enough to see. I played f6 check. King g6. Now this I calculated this far and figured, well, I calculated up to rook g8 check. I could see there's no way he can get out of this mate, and that's indeed what happened. He tried king h6, and now I sealed the net tight with rook e7, threatening bishop f4 check, to which there is really no serious answer. Not to mention rook h8 check. If he can cover knight bishop f4 check with knight g2, but then black mates with rook h8 check, king g6, rook g5 mate. So here in this position, after rook e7, well, white resigned. Okay, now let's move on. And now we've talked about violent forcing moves, looking at examining all checks and captures. Anything that has an effect on the enemy king, you always examine it. And now we're going to talk about rook lifting, and traffic jams in our next example. This is a lovely example too. I was quite struck by it. Let's set it up. This was played also on the Internet Chess Club. Lots of great examples of fine attacking play there. Between the powerful computer Deep Crazy and the human opponent Bladelev, also known as the Georgian Grandmaster Pensiala. Played in Internet ICC in 2006, December 2006. And here we see a lightning attack, a real blitz attack that comes out seemingly out of the blue. Okay. So this example contains, well, we have a little of everything here. We have queen centralization. We have a traffic jam mate. We have rook lifting, very important attacking theme. And, okay, here we go. We'll start from this position. Yeah. And total imagination, as I mentioned, we like to look at any move that has an impact on the enemy king. We look at it. So here in this example, we see Deep Crazy, very powerful computer, rated 3446 on the internet scale, on the ICC scale. That means it's pretty darn strong. It now played the rook lift, rook e3. Okay, that has several points behind it. First of all, it meets black's threat of queen takes g5 with the answer rook g3, winning the queen. So here, there's no way black can hope to survive this position with white's queen perched on e5. It's just not going to happen, especially with the added force of rook g3 about to materialize. Now black cannot hope to survive with moves like f4. That would open up the white bishop. As a matter of fact, bishop takes h7 check, wins immediately in the event of f4. So black really has only one attempt here to hang on, and he played now d6, hoping to chase the white queen away from its incredibly powerful perch on e5. And this is a case where white does not play a check or a capture, but he plays about the next best thing. He makes a direct, very direct move that threatens the house and identifies the real flaw in black's position, which is the congestion, the exit squared congestion of the black king. The queen, the rook, the pawn here, and this pawn here are all obstructing potential flight of the black king. And here also the key square, the flight square h8, is also a very important part of this combination, this attack, and we'll see why after white's reply rook g3. Well, you got to take the queen here. There's no other conceivable hope for black. He took, and now white's next move, everything becomes clear. He takes away the h8 square with knight f7 check, discovered check. He basically prods the black king forward to its doom, to f7, where it meets its natural fate here, rook g7, checkmate, and we have a traffic jam mate. e6 pawn, the f8 rook, the rook on e8, all obstructing flight of the black king. Game over. Okay, now we're going to go deeper, and I think this is a nice next example, played by FIDE world champion Vishy Anand from the Calvia Olympiad. This is a guy who could make attacking play look very easy, fluent, in a deceptively simple position. He whips up a murderous, decisive attack against the strong Canadian Grandmaster Pascal Charbonneau. Played Calvia Olympiad 2004. Let's take a look. Anand is a renowned attacking player in his own right, one of the best of all time in my book, especially in Sicilians. He's in Spanish, the Spanish opening, and the Roy Lopez, and the Sicilian. He's absolutely phenomenal attacker. Now here's an example. This is actually out of a Petrov defense, but we're not going to go through the opening. We're going to watch how Anand, step by step builds on his position. The very minor, seemingly small advantage that he possesses here. First of all, he's on the move. Black has that beautifully centralized black queen on d5 that seemingly rules the board. Now watch how white, but his king is a little bit open, dark squares. White also controls the e file, very, very important point. And white's knight on g5 is definitely more active than its counterpart on c6. Still, if I took a glance at this position randomly, I would think, gee, it's maybe slight edge for white, but it looks like a draw. Well, let's see how Anand builds on this position. He first plays queen g3. So he attacks that pawn on c7, and if black wants to guard it, if he wants to guard that pawn on c7, let's say with queen d6, well, that fine attacking position of the queen, the defensive position actually on d5 has now been transformed into a more passive posture. White can then play queen f3, hitting f7, also attacking that or tying up the knight on c6. I think this gives white a nice little plus. If then black plays queen f6, white does the centralizing, starts working across the board with queen d5. And also now black is faced with moves like knight e4. It's very most disconcerting. Not to mention knight takes f7. Cheap traps all over the place here. Black's in trouble. So white basically trading places with the black queen. He's got the beautiful queen there, not black. Also, if black plays b4, that's a possible defense. White simply plays pawn takes. And let's say black plays knight takes. White takes on c7, and black's in big trouble here. He's down a pawn. No way to recover it. No apparent counterplay. And white's on the road to victory. So Charbonneau played rook to c8, guarding the pawn on c7, and well, awaiting further events. But now that rook on c8 is in a very, very bad passive situation. Anand now increases the pressure with queen f4. So what this move does, very efficient move. On f4, the queen is now attacking f7 and c7, keeping black tied up, defending both weak pawns. So what does he do now? My instinct is usually to search for a quick counterplay. Let's say black played a move like b4, which looks quite plausible at first sight. However, after b4, white can simply play c takes b4, and if knight takes d4, looks great. Centralized knight, centralized queen. Only problem is white now brings his rook to the 7th rank, and black is in severe pressure here. He can try a cheap shot, knight e2 check, that doesn't work because if rook takes e2, queen d1 check, king h2, queen takes rook, queen takes f7 check, and black will get mated. Next move. And also after rook e7, if black plays rook f8, white can simply play queen takes c7. Not rook takes c7, knight e2 check. And also not queen takes d4, queen takes d4, knight e6 check, king f6, and black wins that. But quite ample is queen takes c7, and black does not. Now if he tries his knight e2 check, idea white can play king h2, and black's without adequate defense to let's say knight e6 check, or trade of queens, or now rook takes knight. So queen f4, nice little creeping move, very powerful. And that led black into decentralizing his queen from beautiful d5 square to play the miserable queen d7. So he's losing the fight for the central outpost. And here another nice move from Anand, just a great move, queen e4. A move that that move does it all. Centralizes the white queen. He now dominates the e file completely. That's basically helping to cut black in two. And also he menaces the thrust d4 d5. That move is just does it just a classic, a little deceptively simple looking, but not easy to find centralizing attacking move. So to stop d5, that's the chief worry here for black. Charbonneau tried rook d8. And now white's consolidate. He's got a fine queen position, great knight position, and good pawns on c3 and d4. All that's left now, let's create a weakness in black's camp. He plays excellent rook e3. Now he's getting ready to hit f7. And rook lifting is an art form in chess. This is a good example of that. Powerful rook lift. Black went back to his central spot with his queen. And Anand said, well, I'm going to go back to attacking at c7. So Charbonneau's he's hanging in there. But queen f4 is keeps black tied up to c7. Also, he's ready to put yet more pressure against f7. Black lifted his rook. Defensive lifts are also good. So he lifted defensively with rook d6. But now white played rook f3. Attacking f7. Now if black plays rook d7 and queen f6 check, white makes yet further pressure, explosive pressure on black's position. So that's no way to handle it. Queen f5 would lose a pawn, a very good pawn. So he played knight d8, going backwards. And now Anand closes in for the kill. Queen e3. Black knight on d8's tied up. Even now the black queen on d5's tied up. Both tied, and white has the penetration threat of queen e7. So here Charbonneau in this ugly, also white's got penetration moves like queen e8 ready to go too. Now probably he should have tried rook d7 here. Although I think white has excellent chances here after queen e8. And that queen's a real pest, a real thorn in black's side. But as so often happens in the defender breaks down eventually. He makes a bid for counterplay with b4. No doubt he was in time pressure. This was in the round move 33. Anand always way ahead on the clock, and his Charbonneau probably was down on time. He took on b4, and black was counting on queen takes d4 to help save himself, but now lightning strikes, and Anand notched his victory with rook takes f7 check. Knight takes f7, and now knight e6 check. Forking king and queen. Rook takes e6 is thus forced, and white played queen takes d4 check, reaching a decisive material advantage and leading to an easy victory.